It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when the billionaire walked into the small diner on the corner of Main Street. His usual routine had been disrupted. He was tired of the same routine, tired of the high-rise office meetings and the endless cycle of business deals. He needed something different. Something real. As he sat down at a corner booth, a waitress with a tired but kind face walked over to him. Her uniform was simple, the name tag clipped to her chest read, Hannah. She smiled as she took his order, her eyes meeting his for just a brief moment. It was only for a split second, but it felt as if time had stopped. There was something about her. Something he couldn't place. It wasn't her appearance, though she had the kind of face that could easily be forgotten in a crowd. No, it was her eyes. Those eyes, so familiar, yet so distant. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had seen them before. It was the strangest sensation, like a memory from a lifetime ago, one he had buried so deep in the recesses of his mind that it almost hurt to try and recall it. The waitress left him to his thoughts, but he couldn't focus on the food in front of him. He stared into the mug of coffee, his mind racing. He had grown wealthy over the years, but something was missing. Something important. He had no family to speak of, and the loneliness had started to eat at him. The faces of those he had known, friends, colleagues, seemed to blur into a haze. But this waitress, there was something about her that made him feel like there was a piece of the puzzle missing in his life. As the hours passed, he sat there, watching her move around the diner, interacting with customers, serving meals. The more he observed, the more the connection between them grew stronger. He found himself watching her more than he should have, and the pull was undeniable. He finally left the diner, but he couldn't shake the feeling. That night, as he lay in bed, his mind kept drifting back to Hannah. He couldn't help but wonder, could she be the daughter he had lost all those years ago? The one he thought about every single day but could never find? His heart skipped a beat at the thought. It was impossible. It didn't make sense. But there was something about her, something that gnawed at him, telling him to look deeper. The next day, he returned to the diner. It wasn't a casual visit. He wasn't just there for the food anymore. He needed to see her again, needed to figure out why he felt so drawn to her. As she walked over to take his order, he couldn't help but stare at her, hoping for a clue, a spark of recognition that would reveal the truth. "Good morning," she said, her voice polite but distant. "What can I get you today?" He could barely speak. His heart was racing. How could he ask her such a personal question? He had no right. What would he say? "Are you my daughter?" He hadn't seen his daughter in years, and if this was her, then he'd missed so much of her life. The thought of that made his chest tighten. He quickly ordered his food, trying to mask his inner turmoil. She went off to fill his order, and once again, he was left alone with his thoughts. He had to find out more about her, but he couldn't do it in a way that seemed too obvious. He had to tread carefully, every step measured, but time was slipping away. The connection he felt with her was too real to ignore. Days turned into weeks, and his visits to the diner became more frequent. He would sit there for hours, watching her work, trying to piece together any clues. He overheard bits and pieces of her life from casual conversations with other diners. She had no family, had never spoken much about her past. She lived alone and worked hard, often pulling double shifts. But nothing seemed to add up. She didn't look like his daughter, not exactly. Her features were too different. Yet, her eyes, they haunted him. Each time they locked for even a moment, the world seemed to slow down. He couldn't stop wondering if, by some strange twist of fate, she could be the child he'd lost years ago. He started to ask around, speaking to people who had known her longer. None of them had any answers. They only knew her as Hannah, the quiet, hard-working waitress. No one seemed to know much about her outside the diner. It was as if she had no past. As if she had just appeared one day and became part of the town. The more he dug, the more elusive she became. And yet, the feeling in his chest didn't go away. It grew stronger. It gnawed at him, pushing him forward. What if he was right? What if she was his daughter? But how could he be sure? As the days passed, he couldn't stop thinking about the unanswered questions, about the mysterious connection he felt with her. He had to know the truth. Then, on one particularly quiet afternoon, the answer came in a way he never expected. Hannah came to his table. She was holding a tray, but this time, there was something different in her eyes. A flicker of recognition, something that seemed to pass between them. For a brief moment, their gazes met, and in that fleeting second, everything changed. It was as if she knew, as if she had been waiting for him to ask. The billionaire swallowed hard. Hannah, is there something you want to tell me? She froze for a moment, then slowly set the tray down. Her hands shook, and she avoided his gaze. But he could see it in her eyes now, the same familiarity, the same hesitation. And just like that, the truth began to reveal itself. The silence between them felt suffocating. The billionaire stared at Hannah, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. The brief flicker of recognition in her eyes had shaken him to his core. He had to know. He had to ask, even if the answer tore him apart. Hannah, he said again, his voice softer this time. Do you remember anything? About your past, your family? Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. She avoided looking at him directly, as though the very question was one she had been dreading for years. The room around them felt eerily quiet, as if the world had momentarily paused to listen. I don't know what you mean, she finally replied, her voice shaky but guarded. He wasn't convinced. There was something in her tone, something that hinted at a deeper truth. He had spent weeks thinking about her, piecing together the smallest details. He couldn't just let it go. The connection between them was too strong, too real. I've been coming here for weeks, he said, his voice now steady, and every time I look at you, I feel like I know you. Your eyes, Hannah, they remind me of someone I lost a long time ago. Hannah flinched at his words. She seemed to shrink into herself, her gaze darting around the diner, as if searching for an escape. He could see her struggling, caught between something she couldn't bring herself to reveal and a secret she had long buried. You don't understand, she whispered, finally meeting his gaze. Her voice was filled with pain. I've tried to forget. I've tried to leave it all behind. The billionaire leaned forward, his heart pounding. Leave what behind? What are you hiding, Hannah? For a moment, it felt like time stood still. She swallowed hard, her eyes filling with unshed tears. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't have a family, she said, her voice trembling. At least, I didn't. Not until. I don't remember much. I don't remember what happened after I was taken away. The billionaire's breath caught in his throat. Taken away? What do you mean? Who took you? Hannah looked down at the table, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I was just a little girl. I was taken from my parents. I was in foster care for a long time, and then I ended up here, trying to make a life for myself. But I don't know who they were. I don't know who my real parents are. The words hit him like a thunderclap. She didn't remember. She had no idea who she truly was, and she didn't know that she was the missing piece to his past. The billionaire's heart ached for her, for the lost years, the unanswered questions. He wanted to reach out and hold her, to tell her everything would be okay, but he didn't know where to begin. Hannah, he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, there's something I need to tell you. Something important. She looked at him now, her eyes wide, waiting for him to continue. What is it? He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I think you might be my daughter. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I have this feeling. This connection between us. Her eyes widened, and she stepped back, almost as if he had slapped her. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice rising in disbelief. That's impossible. I know it sounds crazy, he said quickly, but I've spent days thinking about it. I've been trying to make sense of it. And I need to know if it's true. If you're really my daughter. Hannah shook her head, her face pale. I don't remember anything about my parents. How could you be my father? The billionaire stood up, his mind racing. He felt an overwhelming need to prove it to her, to find the truth that had eluded him for so long. But how could he convince her? How could he show her that he wasn't just another man with a strange theory? He looked at her with intensity. I know this is a lot to take in. But I'm asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me help you find the truth. Hannah looked away, her eyes filling with tears, but she didn't say anything. Her lips quivered as though she was battling with herself, unsure of what to believe. Her whole life, she had been searching for something, though she didn't know what. Was this it? Was this the answer she had been waiting for? I don't know, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't know if I can believe you. How can I? The billionaire's heart sank. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew that the pain of their past, whatever it was, would make it hard for her to accept the truth. But he couldn't give up. Not now. I'll help you remember, he said, his voice full of conviction. We'll find the answers together. Hannah stared at him for a long moment. The air between them was thick with tension, with uncertainty, and yet, beneath it all, there was a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt like he had found something worth fighting for. Something real. I'll help you, he repeated. But you have to trust me. She hesitated, and for a moment, he thought she might walk away. But then, to his surprise, she nodded, just barely. A small, almost imperceptible movement. Okay, she whispered. I'll trust you. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Hannah had taken the billionaire's offer to think things over seriously. She stopped meeting his gaze with the same nervousness, but a visible distance remained between them. It was as if she was now grappling with an entirely new reality, a truth she wasn't ready to face, and one that threatened to shatter everything she had believed about herself. The billionaire, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about her. He spent his nights reviewing old documents, photos, and records. But it was all a blur. Nothing could confirm that she was his daughter. All the years of searching, of following every lead, seemed to have brought him to a dead end. But still, he believed in the connection. He couldn't explain it, but every time he saw Hannah's face, those eyes, he couldn't shake the feeling that the universe was pushing them together for a reason. It was late one evening when he decided to visit her again. He didn't want to pressure her, but he needed to know more, needed to hear her say it, needed to confirm that what he felt was real. The diner was quieter than usual, the soft hum of a few patrons and the clinking of plates the only sounds filling the space. It was as if the world had slowed down just for him. Hannah was sitting at the counter, wiping down the surface in front of her. She didn't see him approach, and for a moment, the billionaire watched her in silence. There was something about her, a quiet strength, a resilience that was rare to see in someone so young. She didn't seem to belong here, behind the counter of a small diner, yet there she was, as though she had been grounded in this life despite all that had happened. He cleared his throat, and she turned, her eyes locking with his. Can we talk? He asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. They moved to a booth at the back of the diner, away from the few remaining customers. The fluorescent lights above flickered as if they, too, were uncertain about what was about to unfold. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, Hannah began, her voice shaky but resolute. And I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if I'm ready to believe you, but I can't ignore the strange feeling that there might be some truth in it. So, I need to know more. I need to understand why you think I'm your daughter. The billionaire's heart swelled with a mix of hope and fear. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for, but it was also the moment that could destroy everything. I've spent my life searching for you, Hannah, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't have the answers you're looking for, but what I do know is that there's a connection between us. A bond one can't explain. And I don't want to pressure you into anything, but I believe with all my heart that you're the daughter I've been searching for. Hannah's gaze faltered as she looked down at her hands, clearly battling with her emotions. But how can that be? I don't remember anything about my parents, and all I have are the foster families that took me in and gave me a roof over my head. No one ever told me anything about you. The billionaire leaned forward, his eyes locked onto hers. Hannah, the people who raised you, they may have kept secrets from you. I don't know the details of your past, but what I do know is that I lost you when you were a baby. You were taken from me in a cruel twist of fate. But I never stopped looking for you. A long silence followed his words, and the weight of what he had said seemed to hang in the air between them. The truth was hard to swallow, harder still to believe. But as much as Hannah wanted to resist, she couldn't deny the growing sense that something in her past was finally catching up with her. Something that had been hidden for so long, something that was waiting to be uncovered. Why now? She asked, her voice quiet. Why after all these years? What makes you think I'm the one? The billionaire took a deep breath, his mind racing as he tried to find the right words. Because I've seen something in you that no one else has. Your eyes, there's a fire in them, a strength. And I've followed every lead, every hint, and this is the first time I've felt like I'm on the right path. You were a part of me, and I've never stopped hoping we would meet again. Hannah closed her eyes for a moment, as if weighing the truth of his words. Then she looked back at him, her gaze steady. I don't know if I can accept it. But I also can't ignore it. The billionaire felt his chest tighten. It was clear that this was only the beginning. There was so much more to uncover, so much more that Hannah didn't know about her past. But one thing was certain, he wasn't going to give up on her. Not now, not ever. I understand, he said softly. But I promise you, I'll help you find the truth. I'll be with you every step of the way, no matter where it leads. As the conversation came to a close, they both knew that things could never go back to the way they were. There were too many questions left unanswered, too many mysteries that needed solving. But for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. The billionaire wasn't just some stranger to Hannah anymore. He was a connection to a past she had never known, and maybe, just maybe, he was the key to unlocking the truth. But as they parted ways that evening, a sense of foreboding lingered in the air. The truth was closer than ever, but with it came the realization that uncovering the past could lead to even more dangerous revelations. And they both knew that the story was far from over. The following days passed in a blur for both the billionaire and Hannah. He spent his time poring over every document he could find, contacting people from his past, and retracing old steps in an attempt to uncover the truth. Every lead seemed to lead him in circles, and the frustration began to mount. But he couldn't give up now, not when he was so close. Hannah, on the other hand, seemed to withdraw further into herself. She had agreed to give him a chance, but the weight of the situation was clearly taking its toll. Every time she saw him, it was as if she were looking at a stranger, yet something inside her tugged at her heart. How could she deny the possibility that he was the father she never knew? But there was so much more to consider. If he truly was her father, then who had raised her all these years? What happened to her birth mother? And why had her father been searching for her all this time, when she had no recollection of him? These questions churned in her mind, and each one seemed to bring more uncertainty. She wanted answers, but she didn't know where to start. The truth felt like a heavy burden, one that she wasn't sure she was ready to carry. One evening, the billionaire called her again. He had found something. "I've got something, Hannah," he said urgently, his voice crackling with a mix of excitement and worry. "I need you to meet me. It's about your mother." Her heart skipped a beat. Her mother? She had never known her birth mother, never even known her name. All the years she had spent wondering about who she was, where she came from, and now, this man, this stranger, was telling her he had found something about her? "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I can't explain it over the phone. Please, just come. I'll meet you at the diner in an hour." The diner. The place where everything had started. She agreed, her heart racing as she hung up the phone. Was this the moment that would change everything? When she arrived at the diner, the billionaire was already sitting in a booth, his face tense. There was a folder in front of him, and as soon as he saw her, he slid it across the table. "Hannah, what I've found, it's not easy to understand, but I think it's the key to everything." Hannah sat down and opened the folder. Inside, there were photos of a woman, her mother, no doubt. But the woman in the pictures didn't look familiar. She had a calm, composed face, but there was a sadness in her eyes. She had clearly been hiding something. The photos were old, faded, and the paper had yellowed with age. "I've been looking through old records," the billionaire said, watching her closely. "I traced your mother's last known whereabouts. She worked for my company briefly, before she disappeared. The story goes that she was involved in something she couldn't get away from. But I didn't know that you were part of it." Hannah's heart hammered in her chest as she stared at the photos. "What do you mean? What happened to her?" The billionaire looked away, his jaw tightening. "Your mother was in some kind of danger. She knew too much about something, and the wrong people came after her. They threatened her. Forced her into hiding. She couldn't keep you. That's why you were given up." "I never knew why, not until now." Hannah's mind spun. The woman in the photo was her mother, yet she had been caught in something dark and dangerous. The thought that her life had been tangled in something so sinister was too much to bear. She looked at the billionaire, trying to make sense of it all. "So, you're saying she didn't just leave me? She was forced to give me up?" "That's what it looks like," the billionaire replied, his voice strained. "She didn't have a choice. Someone made sure she couldn't keep you safe. And then, she disappeared. But she left behind a trail that led to you." Hannah's breath caught in her throat. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had been forced into a situation that ripped her away from her. The truth was more complicated than she had imagined, and it left her with 1,000 questions. "But why didn't you ever come looking for me?" she asked, her voice rising with frustration. "Why did it take so long? Why did it take me working in a diner for you to find me?" The billionaire's face darkened. "I didn't know where to look. I thought your mother was lost to me forever. But I never stopped searching. I just couldn't get close enough. Your adoption records were sealed. Every lead I followed led to dead ends. But I knew you were out there." There was a pause as they both took in what was being said. A mother who had been forced to give up her child, a father who had spent years searching for her, and now, this connection that had brought them together. The weight of the past hung heavy between them, but at least now, they had the truth. "I'm sorry," the billionaire said quietly, his voice full of regret. "I never wanted you to go through this. I never wanted you to feel abandoned." Hannah wiped her eyes, trying to make sense of everything she had just learned. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture was still blurry. There was still so much she didn't know, and she didn't know if she was ready for it. But for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. There was someone who cared, someone who had never stopped looking for her. "I don't know what to think right now," she said, her voice shaky. "But I want to know more. I need to understand what happened to my mom. And I need to understand what this means for me." The billionaire nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "We'll figure this out, together. I promise." And just like that, a new chapter began. The search for the truth was far from over, but now, they had a shared goal. The road ahead would be long and full of challenges, but for the first time in years, the billionaire felt like there was a chance for redemption, and for healing. For both of them.